Good evening. I'm Bruce Goldstein, Film Forum's Repertory Artistic Director, and it's my great pleasure to welcome all the way from her home in Los Angeles, Belinda Bauer, who is the co-star with Jeff Bridges, John Huston, Anthony Perkins, Eli Wallach, Sterling Hayden, Dorothy Malone, Thomas Millian, Ralph Meeker, Toshiro Mifune, Richard Boone, and Elizabeth Taylor in William Richards' Winter Kills. And Belinda, I think it's fair to say that of that group, you were the least known of that group.
I think that's fair to say, Bruce. Yes.
And what's
It was
amazing,
my first film. That was
it
my
was your first film. You had
Yeah.
you were born and raised in Australia.
was. I modeled in Australia. I also was on a variety television show in Australia. I had been entered into a beauty contest.
You were Miss Queen of the Pacific. Is Wikipedia correct?
I was not Miss Queen of the Pacific. I was Australia's entry into Queen of the Pacific.
Okay.
China was Queen of the Pacific.
So there you go. I'm never going to trust Wikipedia ever again.
But I also in the process of those interesting experiences, I think back, it's like, my God, a beauty contest. But how I landed there was just very, very interesting. I'm actually writing a book, and I'm writing about my experiences.
You had done a little acting prior to Winter Kills, but not a lot.
I studied acting very seriously. I studied in Australia. I studied in New York briefly with Stella Adler, and then with an acting coach named Jack Waltzer, who was a fabulous actor. And I studied with him very seriously. He also taught method. So I went very deep. I took acting very, very seriously. Walking home one day, I met Zoli, who was the head of the model agency, and that was quite a well-known agency in that time. And I joined his agency and I began modeling. Zoli and his silent partner would give wonderful parties, and oh my God, there'd be like Warren Beatty and Jack Nicholson and all these, famous people would be at these parties. And I met Bill Richard, who said, I might have a part for you in a film I'm doing. So he exchanged information, and sometime later he got in touch with me, and he wanted me to play the part of the girl on the bicycle. I had read the script and I said, I want to play Yvette. And he was, no. And I said, let me read for Yvette. And he said, I wanted young Jacqueline Bisset for Yvette. But he let me read for the part, and he liked my reading, and I read for the producers, and I ended up being cast, which was, and I met Jeff Bridges. That was part of the auditioning process, was to come out to Los Angeles and meet Jeff.
It wasn't only your first film, it was Bill Richards' first film,
Yes.
directing a feature film. He had done some documentaries.
He'd done documentaries, yes, on American Ballet Theater, the Nixon girls, the daughters of President Nixon. He'd done some very interesting documentaries, but this was his first feature.
And he wrote some screenplays.
Yes.
Probably the most famous one is The Happy Hooker.
Yes. He's
Sorry.
a wonderful writer. Bill's a wonderful writer. And as I experienced it, a wonderful director. He loved actors. He was so excited by the creative process.
Well, one of the things about Winter Kills that's so amazing is that this first-time director was able to put together this amazing cast, but not only the cast, but the crew is made up of all these incredible Hollywood legends. Robert Boyle, who was Hitchcock's production designer, Maurice Jarre, who wrote the score for Lawrence of Arabia, and
Vilmos
and
Sigmund,
then
the
Vilmos Sigmund.
cinematographer.
Yeah. I mean, how did a
Bill-
first-time director manage to put this all together like that?
Bill was one of a kind. He was very charismatic, very charming, a writer, so very interested in people. He had a skill of being able to listen. He also was very well read, very political, very smart, and one of the most charming, entertaining people I've ever met. And he has the Irish. He's got like that Irish gift of the gab, and just a delight to be around. Wildly enthusiastic.
Were you at all starstruck during this movie? I don't know if you were in scenes with everybody, but so many great.
I was not. I did have a scene with Elizabeth Taylor, which was eventually not in the film because the age difference didn't work out. That I would have been a child at the time I was supposed to be interacting with her in the film.
Oh, it was a flashback. It was a flashback.
Yeah, but we had a scene together, and she was lovely, and I was not intimidated. Strangely, I just felt excited and very taken care of by Bill, and I was working with Jeff, who is so easy, very, very, just a lovely fellow, very generous actor, very supportive actor.
The two of you were so beautiful. It must have been a delight for Vilmos to be lighting these two gorgeous creatures.
Yeah, I know. We look back now, it's like, oh my goodness, it was so long ago.
You and Bill became an item during the filming.
We did, yeah.
And your first scene that you shot was
getting into bed with Jeff Bridges.
a sex scene.
Well, I'll call it getting into bed with Jeff Bridges.
Getting into bed, but also, how did the script describe it? How did the script describe it, to be delicate about it?
It wasn't delicate. I had to be screaming like I was having the world's loudest orgasm, while Jeff is asking me to marry him, and also trying to keep me quiet because someone would call the police. And I liked that scene because it was funny, it was done with a sense of humor.
Jeff said in an interview that it was a kinky, weird feeling to be doing a love scene with your boyfriend watching. So production had so many problems. But
yeah,
everyone who worked on it, everyone who was interviewed, at least Robert Boyle and Vilmos, they all loved doing the movie. And the cast and crew are very supportive of Bill and what he was doing.
Yeah, it's really, really testament to Bill. He was so wildly creative. He would talk to the craft service guy, who managed snacks and coffee. And if the craft service guy had an idea for a scene that he thought might be helpful, he would tell Bill, and Bill would listen, and he would consider it. So everyone, down to the craft service people, very much felt part of that film, included. We were all making the film together, and that was Bill's gift. He loved people. He just and he believed that everyone had something to offer. Everyone was potentially creative, and I said he's a writer, so he's interested in people. And that's very compelling, to really be listened to by someone, really listened to and enjoyed, and to have someone who's enthusiastic about what you have to say. It's a lovely quality.
The two producers they didn't option the rights. They bought the rights from Richard Condon, the novel, and they were, well, Bill described them later as gangsters, basically. It turns out that And where do you think their money came from?
Drugs.
Drugs. And they both met with ignominious end.
Yeah. No, Bill shared with me that towards the end, and what was amazing is because of how enthusiastic everyone on the set was about the film and believed in the film and loved working with Bill, cast and crew were working for no money. They had run out of money quite some time before. And Fred Caruso, who was the line producer, he managed through his ingenious knowledge of how things work to keep production going. And Bill said money was coming in cash in paper bags. And everyone kept working, the stars, except for one actor, Richard Boone, who refused to do a scene unless he was paid. And it was an expensive scene. It involved the oil rig, a helicopter. It was one of the early scenes in the film, I believe. And the whole crew arrived to shoot the scene, and Richard Boone was missing. He had hired a boat and told the producers he was going fishing. He hadn't been paid. So they had to scurry to go to the bank, raise the money, bring the money back to the wharf, get in the helicopter, find Richard Boone's boat out on the sea, let him know through a megaphone, we have the money, Richard. Richard's boat turned around, came back, and they shot the scene.
So that ran out of money, and to finance it, you and Bill and Jeff went and made another movie in Germany to get this movie. By the way, this was the first film, not production company, single film to go bankrupt. Is that true?
Chapter 11, that's right. And Bill worked determined. He was determined. He hired a lawyer, and he and that lawyer turned over every conceivable leaf to try to get Winter Kills finished. And eventually the lawyer filed Chapter 11. You're right. It's the first time a film has ever gone into Chapter 11. I don't know how Bill managed to juggle the stress of the reality of the situation financially and continue directing the film with all the enthusiasm and joy in the world, you know.
And after all that, it opens in New York to rave reviews, a rave review in the New Yorker. Brendan Gill liked it so much, he went back to see it a second time. And then 2 rave reviews in the New York Times. It did great business. And then what happened to it?
And then other reviewers, other critics didn't review the film well because of how it had been presented, like a thriller, and it's not.
Bill described it as a political Alice in Wonderland.
That's a great description. That's a wonderful description. Yes.
He turned the novel into a black comedy. It is a comedy also. And
Richard Condon loved it. He loved what Bill did with his book.
What happened to Winter Kills? It was a hit in New York and other cities. Do you think the studio just dumped it? Decided they didn't know what to do with it? There
were stories, rumors. I know the initial release in New York, there was a film, Golden Girl. Winter Kills had only been booked into the theater for a short period because there was a film, Golden Girl, coming in that was supposed to be a big summer movie, and there was no negotiation. And it flopped. Yes.
Yeah. And then Bill never gave up with this film, did he?
Never gave up. He was tenacious. He never gave up, and it paid off. He got his film released.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Belinda.
Thank you, Bruce. A pleasure. Yes,
and,
for me also.
I hope to see you. We're opening this film at the New Beverly in Los Angeles at the end of August, and it's going to be here at Film Forum for 2 weeks.
That's wonderful.
Tell your friends.
I will. I
Okay.
will. Thank you so much.
Thank you.